What the f... Okay, here it is. This thing is so wide, there's no way I can be in the frame without blocking the entire monitor. Now, before I carry on with the review, I think I should mention this. So this is the third Prism Plus monitor that I've reviewed. Now, I just want to make it clear that these videos are not sponsored. I wasn't hired by Prism Plus to do this. So these are independent reviews. I've contacted Prism Plus, I've asked them if I could review it. They send it over to me, I review, and then I send it back. All right. So, talking about the specifications of the X490. So, like I mentioned earlier, I also reviewed the X340 Pro, which is an ultra-wide with a 21:9 aspect ratio. This is a 32:9, so I don't know if it's still an ultra-wide or it's an ultra-wide. But this one, you would still consider to be a full HD monitor. So, the resolution for this is 3840 by 1080. Okay, so because of this, it's still considered a full HD monitor. All right, so if you want to look at it another way, you could probably say that these are two 27-inch monitors, full HD monitors compressed into one giant monitor. This has a refresh rate of 144 Hz at this resolution, okay? And response time, you're looking at about 8 to 6 milliseconds. So like I said, similar with the X340 Pro. It's more for people who play, more immersive games, Shadow of the Tomb Raider, Battlefield 5, more AAA titles. But one thing that I did not expect on how this would really excel in is your average office work. Now, I know you're not probably gonna think of this as your first option for an office monitor, but I think it is actually perfect. Now, I've done some stuff. I've looked at Word documents. You have multiple pages in your Word document. I can actually look at 3 or 4 pages at the same time because it's so wide, and look at it big enough that I can edit all 4 pages and look at all of it at the same time. I've never been able to do that, and I don't think a lot of people who work in the office have the chance to do that. Another thing is Excel sheets. If you have some Excel tables that run really long, and usually if you're on a normal 16:9 monitor or even a 4:3 monitor, you would have to keep scrolling and scrolling to look at another cell, and then what you would do is you would freeze a certain column so that you can scroll keeping one column. With this, you don't need to. It is so useful for productivity work, and it's not marketed for this, but I really think Prism Plus should do this. And one thing I always seem to forget to talk about in my monitor reviews is the color gamut volume. So this one actually covers 120% of the sRGB color gamut. So that's also really important information. Now, talking a bit more about HDR. So this monitor definitely does support HDR and is AMD FreeSync as well, which is G-Sync compatible. And again, it's all turned off out of the box, so do remember to turn it on, and you can watch my previous videos where I talk about how to do that. All right. Now, another thing that's really important is, like I said, the HDR content. So it's not just HDR10. This one actually supports HDR 400. So this is actually a whole different standard altogether. The other monitors usually support HDR10, which is might not be entirely accurate here, but usually it's your base or introduction into HDR. But this one is under the VESA standard. So you can go online, and I'll put a link below as well, so you can find out more about that. But this is HDR 400. Now, VESA actually has 3 standards, 400, 600, and 1000, which is also linked to the brightness of the monitor, but there are other conditions as well. But there's a catch. Now, this is probably one of the most unique aspect ratios you will ever find. So even after a week of searching, I couldn't find much content that would fully utilize this aspect ratio. Now, I did find some, but in terms of HDR content for movies or TV series, you're not going to find something that can really make use of the entire thing. So you are going to get black bars on the side. Now for gaming, well, yeah, still excellent, but still your usual caveats. You can have some games that support this. So I played Shadow of the Tomb Raider, I played Battlefield 5, and I would say it is probably the most immersive experience you're gonna get without actually putting on a VR headset. It is fantastic. It is really cool. Even racing games as well, it looks really nice. Although one thing I realized, and it might just be me, but because I'm sitting in front and I have such a wide space, I realized that after a while my eyes seem to hurt a bit. Now, I'm not saying that everyone's gonna have that same experience. It might just be me because I'm not used to it. Going back to games, in my X340 Pro, I also talked about the game that I played the most, Dota 2. Now, Dota 2 on the X340 Pro was a bit weird because, like I said, you don't see more of the map in Dota 2. You get more of an anamorphic effect where it's a bit stretched on the edges, and after a while, while you're playing, it was very uncomfortable for me. Even more so with this. The experience of playing Dota 2 on this, if you use the entire resolution, in my opinion, is just unplayable. So if you do get this monitor and you do like to play Dota 2 or any other mobile game, what I would recommend is stick to a 16:9 resolution. You are going to get black bars at the side, or if you play on the what they call the borderless window option, you can actually see your desktop on the side, but that's fine. At least your gaming experience would be a lot better. Now, one of the coolest things about this monitor is not just the super ultra wide aspect ratio. Now, this monitor actually utilizes something called quantum dot technology. Now, this is still a VA panel like the X340, but well, what is quantum dot technology? Now, I'm not going to be too technical about this, but basically there is a film in between the LED backlight and the VA LCD module. So that thin film is full of nanocrystals that vary in size between 2 and 10 nanometers. Now, what those do is they emit different lights, and depending on the size, they would emit different lights. So what that does, it actually helps the VA panel to produce more saturated colors or better colors basically, and that really helps both your gaming and your media consumption experience. So for this monitor, I found two monitors that are very similar to this. I found one from Asus. So Asus ROG has one similar model as well. Samsung has one as well. So it's a Samsung QLED gaming monitor. Now both of them go for around 1,600 Singapore dollars, which is a lot of money to put in for a single monitor. So for this Prism Plus X490, it is significantly cheaper. Okay, it's about 1,199 Singapore dollars, which is basically 1,200 Singapore dollars. So it's significantly cheaper. So it's about $400 plus cheaper than the Asus and the Samsung monitor. Okay, so I'm actually filming this part about 3 days after I thought I was done. And the reason I'm doing this is because actually when I was done and I was looking through it, I actually just found out that there is another feature of this monitor, and I thought that it was such an important feature that I needed to reshoot this and add this in our video. Now, like we mentioned before, we are looking at one giant ultrawide or super ultrawide, which is basically two 27-inch full HD monitors, kind of like compressed into one. One thing that I thought was a bit of a shame, that even though I kind of had two monitors, I felt that I didn't have the versatility of having two. So I didn't really have that option to have two things at once. Like when you saw earlier with Dota 2, it would be in the center and I couldn't do anything about it. I couldn't move and I had very little space at the side to do other things. Now, I actually found out that this monitor has an amazing feature, or two amazing features. One is a PIP and PBP. So PIP is basically an option to have picture-in-picture. So what it does, it actually splits two signals, or allows two input signals and splits them in half. I'm not going to go too much into the PIP right now, but because I think the PBP, which is picture by picture, is one of the coolest options that you can have in any monitor. So come on in, I want to show you something. So basically, this looks like one giant screen. This looks like a 3840 by 1920 screen. But actually, and I'm going to go to my display settings. Now, if you notice, there is display 1, display 2, but you only see one monitor. Now, actually what's happening is half of this is monitor 1 and half of this is monitor 2. And I'll prove it. Okay, so what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna open up Google Chrome, all right? And when I go on full screen, it's only going on half, which is cool, right? If I go to Mozilla Firefox, it's on the other half. Another way to prove it to you guys is if I move it this way, if you look here in the center, it's going a bit crazy, and that's because this is actually technically the secondary screen. Okay, and another way I can show this to you is I can go to the display settings, and if I go to identify, and you might need to back up a bit, what Identify does is it lets you know which is screen 1 and which is screen 2. So if I go to Identify, you can see 1 is here, 2 is here. So actually it is 2 screens. So one cool thing about this is, let's say for example, I open up Dota 2. Alright, so yeah, Dota 2 is on my primary display, and I still have all of this real estate over here to do other things. Okay, so I have a replay here, or I think I'm watching something live. So I can go here, and by the way, this is on borderless window again. So I can go to Chrome, I can move this to the side, and I can do anything that I want. So I basically have that same versatility that I would have if I had 2 separate monitors without the giant bezel in between. Okay, now another really cool feature is if let's say at home or at work, all right, you have 2 separate systems. So let's say for example, I have one system over here and I have another system over here, okay? And I need to use both for whatever reason it works. It happens sometimes, I've seen it myself, okay? Now what I can do with this monitor, I can have one PC go to this monitor, I can have another PC go to this side of the monitor, and I can download a software, I think it's called Synergy. And I'll put the link in the description below as well. Now, Synergy is a really cool software. What it does is, if you install the Synergy client on, let's say, 2 different machines, I can actually use the same mouse and keyboard on both. I don't have to have a separate keyboard and mouse here, another keyboard and mouse here. I can actually have the same keyboard and mouse, and I just move it, it switches to another system. And this would be another, so there you go, you have another amazing office use. So that's a really cool feature, right? Now, yes, it is. However, there are some small drawbacks. Now, setting it up the way it is now actually was not that easy. I had a lot of phone calls and messages between Prism Plus and myself because I couldn't get it to work at first. Now, when I first plugged it in, the resolution was all over the place. What it would do at first is it would set both to 3840 by 1080, which is actually the resolution of the whole monitor. So by doing that, you basically had the same resolution of the entire screen in here and in here, which made it look very squashed. And then when I set it to 1920 by 1080, it was even smaller. It was really, really small with a lot of black. So I had a lot of calls with Prism Plus, and they were great. They looked at it and they found out what was the issue. And it's really got more to do with your graphics driver. So because this is not a very common thing, maybe people like Nvidia and AMD, or they don't really put in too much effort to try and make this seamless. I don't think it's an issue with the monitor. I think it's got more to do with the graphics card. So what I would recommend is, if you do get this monitor and you want this same sort of setup, change your resolution in the Nvidia settings, all right? So, and try the different, you will see multiple instances of 1920 by 1080, and pick the one that gets it to the right aspect ratio. It will take some time, but it'll work. And what if you don't use Nvidia? Let's say for example, I had my Microsoft Surface and I plugged it in and it doesn't have Nvidia drivers. Intel has their own as well, if I'm not mistaken, which gives you that same sort of versatility. And now a really, really important thing, if you do have this setup, do note that HDR and FreeSync will be shut down or switched off. So you don't have that option if you do this dual display kind of setup, which is a shame, because one of the reasons you probably bought this is for those features. And if you do this dual monitor display, you won't have those features. But I mean, there are not many monitors out there that give you this option. And going back to the price of paying about $1,200 for this feature compared to $1,600 for its competitors, the Asus and the, what was the other one? The Samsung one, right? Yeah. So I still think it's a really good option. So if anything, it shows the versatility of this monitor and not the restrictions. It is very versatile. There are so many more uses. In fact, more, I could think of more than on the Prism website itself. So really, really great monitor. So that about wraps up this review. Click the like button if you enjoyed this video, and do remember to subscribe to our channel and hit the bell icon to receive notifications on our next video. I'm JP, and I'll see you real soon.